All right, folks. So here I am with the one and only Mr. Wayne Levine of BetterMen Coaching. How you doing?
Good, Greg. Good to be here.
Yeah. Where are you about? You over in
SoCal,
SoCal. Nice.
right?
See the
Where it's
sunlight coming in.
sunny and beautiful. It's beautiful every day here, like Pleasantville.
Yeah. You never get any rainy days over there. It's
Yeah,
always,
lately, finally, after years and years, we've got a lot of rain, which is beautiful.
yeah.
It's gorgeous now. But yeah, we live in the desert and we stole all our water from up north. So lots of issues in Southern California, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Well, today I basically want to have a chat with you about very interesting situation I think a lot of guys are going through, which is around being in the wrong relationship, leaving a relationship. How do you know when you're in the right one? How do you go about leaving it and all that jazz, all those
yeah.
issues that are built into that. So, yeah, basically just in general, tell me about your story. What happened recently?
Um,
The most
I
general
was
question possible.
really, I was, I'm 55.
Yep.
I was 19 when I met my wife. I was 22 when I got married. I was 30 when I had my daughter, 32 when I had my son, building a business, buying a house, paying bills, being a good guy, being a good dad, doing everything I thought I should be doing. And a good 10, 15 years into it all, it wasn't feeling great. And I did a men's weekend back in the early 90s. And that's when things really started to reveal themselves to me. Because up until then, my life was about my family. I didn't have men in my life. And so all of a sudden now I'm hanging around a lot of men. I'm on a men's team. Here comes a siren. I'm on a men's, yeah.
Yep.
I'm on a men's team, so I'm meeting these guys every week, and we're having all kinds of activities. And so now all of a sudden I'm hearing things that I've never heard before. Like I'm hearing what's going on in their relationships, good and bad. I'm hearing what they're doing about it, good and bad. And I'm starting to learn in their company what it really means for me to be the man I want to be. So up until the time I was 33, I just thought of myself as, my mom's little boy. I was the baby of three boys.
So you weren't teaching men's groups back then. You were more like you were going to them as the client, as the customer. Right?
Yeah, I was a participant.
Got
Yeah.
it.
And I had another business. I was in video and film production.
Sure.
That was my original business. And so all of a sudden now I'm hearing things. Like, for instance, I'm hearing like what's going on in guys' sex lives and stuff that I'm thinking, how come I'm not doing that?
Yeah.
And so it taught me things, and I tried things, and I would have problems, and now I had a place to go. I had a place to go with my issues and my questions and my confusion. Plus, I got my ass kicked constantly because I was an arrogant guy.
Sure.
But the arrogance grew, and we can talk about this a little bit too, which is part of the issue that is in and around surrounding what actually ended up happening with my marriage. That there's that arrogance that grows in a lot of us when we're just trying to do it ourselves. And we haven't had the experience of having help growing up. And so we tend to not ask for help. And we tend to look as if we know everything and we have all the answers, when in fact we don't know shit.
Yeah.
We're just doing our best and thinking that this is the way we need to do it. This is what life looks like. This is how we men need to do it. Carve it out, do it yourself, man up, and all that nonsense.
Man up.
Man up. Look, these phrases. So, we catchphrases are very cute, but the issues are very complicated.
So where were you at? I don't mean to interrupt you, but where were you at when it all went down back in the early days, for the first 10 years, let's say? would you say it was kind of a blissful relationship? Everything was all good. Everything was smooth sailings. And then,
Yeah, sure. I was a good little boy. Okay, so, and I was working hard, and we were fortunate enough to be able to buy a house before it got absolutely crazy here with prices. And we took all the cabinets off and stripped all the paint, and we did all these things. And I was living the life that I thought I was supposed to live. Now, was I happy? I think I was as happy as I could be, but the truth was, inside, I had never been happy. So that's one of the issues here, is that the work is an individual sort of journey. The relationship is just the sum total of the two individuals' personal lives, right? And an opportunity to work these things out. Now, I wasn't happy. I didn't come from a happy family. My father died when I was young. My mother was very angry. She was angry at him for dying, leaving us with no money and blah, blah, blah. And she never got over her anger. She never moved on. She never remarried. She ended up blaming me for not remarrying because I had made a comment once when I was 13 that I would never want to have another father, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up hating men too and not respecting men. And then ultimately not having any respect for the man that I am.
Yeah,
because of the influences of my mom.
That ties into you saying I was a good little boy, in opposed to what?
Well, as opposed to really being connected to what I want. What I want.
Yeah.
Right? And not having had a father, I was out of balance energetically. I didn't have the masculine. And so I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right. Okay. I'm going to find a really good quote while you keep talking that totally ties into this that I really resonated with.
Okay. So when I met the woman that would become my wife, this is how it was described to me. On the scale of 0 to 100 in terms of the divine feminine that's available for us, my mother was a 2. Okay. When I met my wife, because I was used to a 2, she was 100. But maybe she was only 40 for me. This is not about her. This is in terms of what I need, what a good match was for me, right? But because I came from such scarcity, I projected everything onto this woman. And I was young. And she gave me a blowjob, and you know what I mean? Like, what? Yeah. I'll marry you.
Yeah.
It was beyond that. She's terrific. She was so nurturing. She was fantastic. Okay, so this is not about criticizing her at all.
Sure.
But it's where I was. I was 19. I was a boy. I was a baby. I knew nothing. And I coach men now who are my age or younger who married young, and I understand that you don't know who you are at that age. You have no idea who you are. And it's a rough time to make a lifelong commitment to anybody. And it's really an unfair position to put anybody in. But it's been part of our culture. This is what we're taught to do, what's expected of us.
Well, also, I got to say that the millennials these days struggle with committing at all, it seems like. Like, they've gone the complete opposite way, which is they don't jump in too soon. They never pull the trigger,
That's right. Well, they look at their parents and go, I don't want this.
Right.
I mean, Mom and Dad, why would I want to do what you're doing? You guys are miserable. You have a lousy sex life. You don't do anything that's fun. Why would I want to?
Or their Tinder sex life is just off the hook and they just can't say no to the single life, and it just keeps going into the 30s and the 40s,
Well, look, the Tinder life can be fun for 5 minutes, but I did that a little bit when I ended up getting out of my marriage and learned a whole lot about how ridiculous things can be out there. But yeah, you could choose not to grow up, but then there's a price to pay for that as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a whole other sort of tangent we can go down in terms of ultimately what there is in life when you do grow up, right? You can have a lot of fun, but the question is, what's your purpose? And I think what was going on for me, especially once I was introduced to the circle of men, was what am I about? And there was this voice that started to speak up. But I dealt with it in the best way I could, but on a certain level, I ignored it. Meaning my soul was saying, hey, you're not happy. Now, you're not happy as a human coming into the marriage, but there's something about this relationship that's not working for you. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. But I kept thinking, well, quitting is not an option. Divorce is not an option. I have young kids. What am I going to do? I can't afford to get divorced. I mean, all these things kept me in it. And so I would try things, and I would ask for help, and I would talk to the men, and I said, what can I do? This is, sex is not happening, or intimacy is not happening, or I want to be on the spiritual path with somebody, but she's not really into it. What can I do? I asked these things, and I would try things, and I would introduce things. But I kept ignoring this ache, this voice that kept telling me, you're not happy in this relationship. Separate from who you are, this is not good for you. But I was afraid. I was afraid. I didn't have the courage to make that choice. And I think that's a place that a lot of men find themselves in. They make a decision, and down the road they realize, wow, either I made the wrong decision or things have just changed a lot. And we live in a culture, where this world, almost every relationship you will ever know comes to an end. Work relationships, dating, they come and they go. But we're taught that marriage, this relationship, must never end.
That motherfucker's for life.
This motherfucker is for life. This one relationship should never end. And because of that construct and that pressure, what do? We can feel trapped rather than feeling the freedom to discuss it and go, you know what? Things aren't really working well. Let's work on this. Let's work on that. We'll tend to not say anything because we fear that conversation. What will happen? What if we try working on it and it doesn't work out? And so because we don't want to deal with that potential ultimate outcome, we avoid it.
Yeah, I don't even talk about it. It's like the forbidden conversation, right?
Right. And so let's say sex isn't what you want, which is the case in probably 9 out of 10 relationships, if not more, eventually over time. What do you guys do? Well, there's a reason why the sex trade is the biggest industry in the all over the world, because men are going out and getting it elsewhere. And it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy for us. It's unhealthy for the women. It's really a bad scene. The energy around it's not good. But, we're thinking, well, what are we going to do? I'm not going to leave my wife for this, so I'll go get it over here, and then that'll be fine. I'll get a rub and tug, and I'll do this, I'll do that. And then, of course, the men with money and resources have more options. The guys traveling.
Sure.
And so the women know this is happening. By the way, guys, the women know this is happening. Whether they choose to bring it up to you is something else, but they know. Women are intuitive monsters, and they feel it. And so we have millions of people who are unhappy in relationships, primarily because they don't know how to talk about what's going on for them. They're afraid to tell the truth. They're afraid of what might happen, and they stay stuck. And what happens is that once you're stuck in one part of your life, it starts to filter into other parts of your life. And soon you're just not the man you want to be, period. And of course the women are unhappy as well.
Yeah, I think there's many parallels between being in a job you hate, being in a relationship that's not working. It sort of bleeds from one to the other, if you will. If your relationship's a mess, it'll start to affect other relationships, how business is going, and vice versa.
That's right. Yeah, because who you are in your marriage is who you are at work. I mean, it's like that's what we say in the circle of men. Who you are here is who you are everywhere. So we don't need to see you elsewhere. We just need to start seeing who you are to know, we can see how you're showing up in your marriage. Because if you're an asshole with these guys, you're that way with your woman too, and your kids,
Right.
different levels. But I think men in their arrogance think that we can compartmentalize and that we can act this way here, but everything else is okay. But the truth is not. It's not okay. And those who are awake can see it. Everybody else on some energetic level is feeling it.
Yeah, so that's a question I had is, what about guy friends before you join the men's groups? Were those conversations just don't bring it up, don't talk about it? Like, why did everything shift for you once you started going to these inner growth, men's groups to develop yourself versus just with buddies having a beer kind of thing and calling each other on your bullshit
Mm-hmm. Well, so first, personally, I literally did not have any buddies before. So I didn't have those guys to hang out with. I was a boss. I had employees.
Because I got friends that call me out on my stuff all the time, and they'll say things that really you don't want to hear, but you need to hear, and it's of course super valued. But yeah, I was just curious in your case.
Yeah, but some men do. I think that's happening more and more these days than it was when I was young. I mean, I just think that the younger generation, those conversations are happening more. The guys my age would more often than not avoid it. I mean, the clients I have, when we talk about what their relationships were like with men before they joined a group, those men avoided those conversations. And if somebody was having trouble in their marriage, you can commiserate and bitch about your women. But when anything serious came up, most of their friends would run for the hills because it was just too uncomfortable. And men see that all the time in divorce, because when they get divorced, the wives band together and tell the men, essentially lean on them not to hang out with the guy. And so these choices are made. And I know a lot of men who have lost their friends who were part of couples because they didn't have the balls to remain friends with their buddies, and they wanted to please their women, which really is just a precursor to the end of that marriage as well.
Yeah, it's never a healthy thing. Stop seeing your guy friends. Stop having guy time. All right, so
now,
then
it's one thing for a woman to ask that of a man. Okay, it's another thing for a man to accept it, and that's the work that we can do as men. So a woman and our women can do whatever they want to do, but for us, the work is figuring out who are we, what's important to us, what are we committed to, and unfortunately, most men think that they must please their women, and in doing that, they compromise themselves, and eventually that accumulates, and it completely undermines the relationship, and it makes us unhappy.
Of course. Yeah, that reminds me, the quote I was referring to, it's Marshall Rosenberg. He wrote a book about nonviolent communication. And he had this one quote that really resonated with me where he said, if you want to be, something along the line of paraphrasing, but it's like along the lines of, if you want to be, we're all trained to be good little boys and good little girls, and, that's what makes you feel depressed. So if you want to be depressed, or if you want to be a good little boy, a good little girl, you better get used to being depressed, because really it comes down to asking for what you want. I completely butchered that quote. I wish I had it, but I mean,
it was fantastic, Greg. That
brought a tear to my eye.
My goodness, I'm touched. Well, we're going to save this segment right now. Watch this.
Turn it around for me. Come on, save it.
Watch us do this. Being a good little boy is being a pleaser. And if your focus is on pleasing, you're not getting what you want. But you're a pleaser because of the environment in your home when you grew up, for any number of reasons. Mom was crazy and you had to walk on eggshells, and dad let you know that don't upset mom, so you are pleasing mom. Dad's abusive, alcoholic, you don't want to upset dad, you're a pleaser. Your parents are critical and you're trying to gain their attention and validation, and so you're just trying to please. All these things that kids do to cope and survive in their homes, they form who you are, and they inform everything you see. And so you grow up just doing what you've always done, and you please and you please and you please, and then one day you wake up and you realize how miserable you are. And what happens in the relationship when you're in a long-term committed relationship is that that's where it all starts to show up. That's why you'll be a prick to your woman more than anybody else, because this is the crucible. I mean, this is where it's all happening. You're most vulnerable. You're having sex. You're dealing with these tough issues that trigger you. And if you're unconscious to what's going on and how your childhood is bringing all these issues to bear in the relationship, you just start recreating the same situation that you were in when you were a kid, so that you try to work it out. And what usually happens is that relationship fails and you go to another one, you keep doing it until you really are ready to look at yourself and understand what you're bringing to all of these relationships. But Robert Glover wrote a book, No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, who read my book, Hold On to Your Nuts, read his book, and there's an overlap, right? It's all good stuff. But I call it the good little Jewish boy syndrome, because I work with a lot of Jewish guys in my area, and it's an epidemic. Good little Jewish boy syndrome. These guys can be brilliant and powerful in their own way, but they're terrified of their wives.
Yeah. By the way, really quickly with your book, I was looking at it briefly. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is it like the essence is you take one area of your life which is a non-negotiable area, no matter what, you stick to that. Am I on the right track with this one?
So hold on to your nuts. Nuts stands for non-negotiable, unalterable terms.
Uh-huh.
The things that define you as a man, the things that you're committed to, and the things which, if you compromise, will eventually make you a resentful, pissed off guy that will have you taking it out on the people you love, right? So it's essentially your boundaries, core values, right?
Uh-huh.
But there aren't many, ultimately. There are a few things. Everything else you can compromise. You can work things out. What movie you're going to go to, what restaurant. But there are core things. And if you're not clear about what those core things are, you will compromise them to please your woman. And then down the road, you will blame her for all those compromises.
But it's really you that compromised yourself, essentially, from the beginning.
That's right.
There was a big movement with the pickup artists. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, back about, I think, 10 years ago. And it was all about get your power back, stop, people pleasing, stop appeasing women, bust her balls, all that kind of stuff. And I think it was healthy in one regard, that it helped guys get their spine back. But I think there was a bit of it pushed them in a bit of a bad direction in terms of not the authenticity of a really, strong, wholesome, grounded, balanced man. You just had sort of these parts that they were hacking, if you will, of the boundary stuff. So, I think that was addressing that common theme that causes a lot of misery in relationships, or starts sending it all down the wrong track, is that lack of spine, I guess, or lack of boundaries with their woman.
Yeah, but that energy in that community is so twisted. I have had interactions with some of the guys in that community, and to a man, they had lousy relationships with their mothers. They hate women.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of them show up at your programs and your workshops now. Sort of trickle down after they finish that phase. And now they.
But yes, eventually when they've got like a real issue and they're ready to face it. But I've had men who wanted to work together or have our websites linked, and so I had these conversations with these guys, and to a man, I'm telling you, they hated their mothers. And so all this work in this community is about manipulating women so that you can get them into bed. And it's heartless. Now,
it works. It works, and it's heartless. It's sort of
it works because the women are wounded as well. Yeah. So you are taking advantage of them. You're a perpetrator. There's just no getting around it. Now, are the women consenting? Yeah. Okay. You can live your life that way if you like, but on a spiritual level, it's completely bankrupt. And there's no love in it. And so, look, if that's the way you want to live your life, God bless you. That's not what I'm about. I teach men to try to be authentic and to figure out who they are. And I think that my spiritual practice is really important to me, and it's a big part of the work that I do. I don't preach I don't follow a particular religion, but I think that at their core, all these religions really are talking about the same kinds of things, about being a good person and doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, So, there are a lot of lost souls and lonely men, and that kind of pickup work might get you some touch, and some attention from a woman, but it's short-lived. Because unless you do the work internally to be the man you want to be, you will still never attract the kind of woman that you'll be happy with whom you can sort of grow and
Sure.
go down this path together.
Sure.